Hello all, Game Methuselah here. Just wanted to touch up a little bit more and start working on the Ruby Dragon. As you might have seen in the last video, I got my base coat down, laid it down, it dried out actually pretty good. I touched up a few extra spots and I started sort of working on some concepts here. Now the really interesting thing is, after looking at the artist rendering of this dragon, I'm kind of wishing I painted it brown. It, I think, would have been a much better deal. Brown is also a way lot easier color to detail up with speed paint. So I kept thinking I was going to go ahead and repaint the whole thing brown and not. But now I think what I'm going to do is pretend I painted it brown and show you sometimes when you're speed painting and things don't quite go the way you want them, how you have to then sort of change the tone. I hope it works. It may fail, but we'll get to see that. And that's sort of kind of fun too, part of it. Thing to kind of know is I got a lot of people who are sending me different techniques for how to do the jewel work, how to do the gems and the shards and the like. There's a good Games Workshop one where they paint it silver and then they do this little brush work on it with some of their special gem paint. That would work really great, but it kind of works for opal type materials, round stones, not ones that are faceted like what we have here on the dragon. Or shards, which we also have, which are sort of long, just stretched out pieces of stone that don't have a lot of detail on them. So you kind of got to add a lot of that. So that's going to be a little interesting to do. I also worked on the colors for maybe what I want to do on the talons and claws and alike. And I was thinking maybe, staying with the red tone, but I think what I'm going to go to black and then give it sort of a reddish hue dry brush, which will give us sort of a black cherry kind of color, which I think would be really effective for this figure. But again, like I said, we're going to go ahead and start on it immediately. And the idea is I'm going to pretend I painted it brown and we're going to work it back in so the figure will be reddish hued and obviously red, but a lot less red, much more subdued, and potentially a lot more like a brown. Now, since I paint for the proletariat, not the bourgeoisie, a lot of people commented about the crummy paints I use. Now, I use everything. I'm not real particular, as I've mentioned before in some of the paintings. Liquitex is a Pro Vision paint I use a lot of, but I've used a lot of these Dreamcoat item painting, and really less so than I think Steve Kish did. I kind of got this from him. Most of these are his paints, actually. So he was really big on this. He didn't think it was necessary to go crazy on your different paints and alike. And I thought that was sort of reasonable. And since I've been kind of staying with his style of trying to keep the painting easy, fast, and alike, I'm making up a dry brush, which is a little bit of just sort of tan lightened up with a little bit of red thrown in, and maybe a little more red than I would have liked. But basically, if you've ever done dry brushing, and if you haven't, then I guess you're going to obviously get to see it a little bit more firsthand here, it's just that. You put the paint on, and then the idea is, and let me see how we are looking good, you want to pick up all the high spots. And in doing so, this is how you get the figure to start to come to life. The pieces start to do the work for you. All the high ends of the part of the figure are going to pick up the paint. Obviously, the lower parts are not, and they're going to keep their original color. Now, sometimes with a figure like this, when you have a large surface area, you're not necessarily going to have a lot of very defined ridges. So you've got to be a little bit careful with the dry brush that you don't put too much on, because it's often very likely that you'll just paint a whole patch that'll come out the color of the dry brush material and not doing a highlight effect is what you're hoping for. That could be here a lot. Again, when it does, again, as I always tell people, you don't panic when you're painting, especially when you're speed painting. Because again, you're not trying to produce a masterpiece. My guess is that there may already be pro painters in the work, working on these to make them look really state-of-the-art. I could be wrong. But I can guarantee you once they come out, there's going to be people who are going to likely use some of the very nice pro painting services and alike that are available with really skilled painters, painting the figs. And you'll start to see a lot of really beautiful renditions, I think, of this dragon. And if you go online and you just start looking for pro painting, or if you just want to go look on Games Workshop, look for Golden Demon. If you go back far enough into the 90s, you can even find my Golden Demon back in the dark age, because it's on the internet. You will be unimpressed, as pretty much I was at the time, because most of, obviously, as I've told people, is I paint to play. Everything I paint, my feeling is it's going to be on the board and used. It's either going to be for an army battle game, it's going to be for a role-playing game, whatever. I don't ever paint to put them into competitions and then put them into glass cases that are all dust-free. I expect people to use them and play with them. I expect them to get dinged and beat up. I expect to have to go back and work on them in the future. And I expect that's what will always be the case as long as my figures are out there. But that's because I'm not painting, again, to impress anybody. I'm painting to get something that I'm happy with on the board that I can play with now and use in a game. And that's the advantage of speed paint. I mean, I could conceivably sit down if I had the full day to do it and wasn't trying to put it on a video, and I could more likely bang this guy out and get her done today. Or at least enough done that what I would just do is a little tap-up work. Really, all the challenge in this figure is going to be in the gems. It's going to be the hardest part because anytime you have a shard material and you're trying to get it to, to produce, there's a lot of different techniques, and none of them are quick. The normal feeling I would do is what I'm thinking I'm going to do on the little gems on the arms and forearms and shoulder pieces on this, and even maybe the shards, is essentially dry brush them white and then start layering red inks in. We might do some painting, some different maneuvers and stuff, but again, my whole point is this has to be done quickly. Most of the people who were sending me techniques were really good, and some I had used before, many I had not, but I thought they were really excellent. But the problem is that the techniques they were showing me take time. And again, that defeats the issue on speed paint. Now, you guys have been watching this. I think I've been painting this about 6 minutes, maybe a little less. But there's what you start to see the effect of the dragon. You can start to see the detail come out here. Now, I'm fundamentally changing the tone of this to get it away from a red and get it more into a brown hue, so that when I do the actual shards, which will be in red, they'll stand out substantially more. You can sort of see the detail substantially better as it comes up. You're letting the figure do a lot of the work, and that's what you want. So I'm going to dump the dry brush and start going into a wash in here. The wash I'm going to kind of mix between paint and ink because I want it to lay down fairly thick. The protect is running out. This is a really dark reddish brown. This would have likely been, had I had to readdress this figure again, and what I would even suggest for most of you guys to do, would have likely been the color I would have used. In the next pin, I'm going to put brown ink, and then I'm going to use red ink in the last, and then we're going to just sort of mix it up a little bit here as we go. Again, the whole idea is you start doing this fast so that you can let the figure do a lot of the work for you. If you're having to do it all, as you can see here, as I mix this little ink on the top, and I don't know whether you can see it at this distance. Let me see if I can get it a little closer to the camera. You mix the ink up here, and what you're getting between the red ink and the brown ink, and just a tad of the brown paint, is you're getting this really, really red. Still not maybe showing up sufficiently on the camera. But trust me, it's kind of a red, super reddish brown. And then we're just going to layer it on the figure. Now, I would normally almost use this as a finishing type touch. I doubt necessarily whether that's going to be the case in this miniature. Because, again, I'm trying to change the color tone and get it a little bit away from the bright red dragon red and a little bit more towards the brown. I may fail. I mean, it's not even impossible in the realm of things that I might just finish this one up and look to get another one down the road, and then come back and paint it very much like the brown pattern. I thought that after looking at the artist's conception, really, I think what I would recommend to everybody out there who's going to get this figure. Also, because of the way the figure is produced and the colors combos and things like that, I think this figure screams to be airbrushed. And I would think that some of the really proficient Games Workshop airbrush painters that you'll see on a lot of their large stuff could produce figures substantially nicer than anything I'm going to be able to produce with a brush paint. Now, that's not saying, if you spend time, you're not going to get something that you're going to like, because you will. But again, what I'm always balancing in is time. Hope I'm keeping this in focal view, since I'm actually not looking through the camera right now. Get an idea of how it looks. But this is, again, when I'm telling people to slop paint on, this is really what I mean. You come back and add detail, clean up it afterwards. Most people spend a lot of time trying to make sure they stay within the lines, they do everything sort of perfectly while they're doing it. And I have found over the years the best way to do things quickly is just get the paint on and then come back and fix any problems and or add in special detail. And it's the special detail and the fixing of anything that doesn't necessarily come out perfect that you're going to start to shine. Because very often when you're just throwing paint on, half the time it's going to go on almost perfectly, and you're going to end up loving some of the results you get. And if you don't, because like I said, I keep everything so very thin, I could essentially even completely repaint this model and it wouldn't necessarily lose any of its real detail. Now, I'm not planning on that, and we're not looking to do that, so forget about that I'm talking about that end. I'm just saying that for me, to do this dragon again from square one, I would start with this as a brown dragon, and then add all your gem touches in red to get really stark contrast, and to allow that sort of defining crystal to be the factors that are most notable on the dragon. Now, as you can see, even toning it down a lot, the dragon is still very, very, very red, which, again, not what I was hoping for, but I think we'll just keep playing with it and we'll get it to go. So I'm going to let this dry now and set up, and then what I'm going to come back and do, maybe on or maybe off camera, because I just been looking at a matter of time, I'm going to want to maybe put a second layer of ink brown on this to get this even darker. But right now you're just seeing shines, so you're not going to necessarily see. But I want, once it dries a little bit, you can just sort of see the combination of how the dry brush and the wash are working together to give you the detail on the figure. So I'm going to go ahead now and turn off the camera, let everything dry, and we will come back at a later date and address this maybe on this afternoon. So talk to you a little later. Fight to be devil's fight, for I hate peace. Game on. So I just let it dry a little, and I was kind of working on looking at some shard techniques. Up here I painted the talon white, the shard white, and then put an ink wash on it that I don't think is actually even dried. That might work. You can see some little down here that I added a little different red. Trying to find a concept. Again, because I painted it red, you're not going to get anywhere near the kind of definition that you might want if this dragon was brown. So again, like I said, I think that would be the suggestion I would do. I might enhance these with a little bit of white and then some more ink so these become a little more red. But honestly, looking at it, I'm kind of pretty happy with the dragon for a speed paint. It's doing good. The figures are pretty decent. I can see a small flaw here where I didn't get enough wash on it. Oops, that might have been paint. Beep. And you want to make sure that you do, because that's what often the washes do, is they settle down and clean up any dry brush. And that was one of those points that I mentioned where you got a little extra, too much paint on there and it pushes it forward. So you're always wanting to look for those. But like I say, you never panic, because you can always come back like that and just fix it. But I'm going to go ahead and off now, and I got to run a couple quick errands, and then I'm going to come back and we'll keep playing with this a little bit, hopefully. unless something comes up and we can show you more of how this is going to look. So see you soon. Paint on.